Plus, there's a time, so you can't ask forever. Jesus Christ. That was last year.
Oh shit.
That was last year. Yeah.
Did I? You're okay.
I'm gonna go back and forth between a million things, but you can love them both. That would be great. I'll check this one. I don't think I highly doubt we'll get very lucky. Yeah, I don't. Alright, Zach, let's go. Oh, that's really where he is? Hopefully we're done in 20 minutes. He said hopefully. Hey, hi, Star. Waiting for Zachariah. I'm imagining.
Well, I guess I can throw up my gum now that we have extra time.
Oh my god. I know. Alexi, I'll give you this when 10 seconds left. This at 5, okay?
Sounds good.
Seconds.
Yeah, whoa.
People have things to do.
Yeah, I got things to do.
Your answer is halfway over. Yeah.
Alright. Here we go, round 2, right? Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the SSMU 2015 VP Internal By-Election Debate. This evening, we'll be answering Alexei Simakov, our only candidate for VP Internal this year. We'll be answering a number of questions asked both by your current SSMU executives as well as some audience members, as well as online questions. If you would like to ask an online question, you can use the hashtag SSMUbates. We'll be monitoring it up here at the front in order to get those questions and be asking them to Alexei. The format for the debate this year will run with an opening statement of 1.5 minutes, followed by 4 questions from the current SSMU executives, where they will have the opportunity to ask 1 follow-up per question, followed by 7 questions from the audience members here today, and then a 1.5 minute closing statement. So with that, I would like to begin the current debate. You have the floor.
Debate. Thank you for coming, especially my campaign team. A lot of times in elections, the candidate gets a lot of attention, but the campaign team doesn't, and we should recognize the fact that how much work they put into this and get no credit. What I want to talk about is why I'm running for SSMU VP Internal. There's a lot of things I want to accomplish. My priorities will be electoral reform, which I think everyone agrees is very necessary. I also want to make sure that we work with the current process to make sure that the yearbook becomes financially sustainable, have a referendum next semester, and make sure that we can afford it and more people are using it. Beyond that, I want to add a diversity of ideas to the council. I think I want to represent the students that don't have as much representation right now. Something that's a bit more center, a bit more right, if you want to call me that. I think it's important that we have a variety of voices because we're not going to accomplish these goals by having one side dominated. We're going to accomplish our mutual goals by having them, intelligently debated and criticized, and then settling on a compromissory decision. I hope that's something you guys agree with me with, and if you do, I hope I have your ballot.
Thank you. We'll now be followed with 4 questions from the SSMU executives. There will be a minute answer time, as well as 1 follow-up question per the 4 questions, and a 30-second response time. You have the floor.
Okay, so just to get started, we're going to be asking questions about some of the major parts of the VP internal portfolio. So events is one of the major parts of the portfolio. In recent years, SSMU has been making an effort to diversify the events portfolio and move away from exclusively alcohol events like Frosh, Faculty Olympics, Four Floors, and include smaller scale or more inclusive events that would appeal to a wider variety of students. So what events do you have in mind to support this diversification of SSMU events?
What we have with this, for example, how we worked Frosh recently is Frosh is increasingly being more run by faculties instead of SSMU. The faculties are taking on much larger responsibilities, and I think that's a great direction because the smaller you are, the more in tune you are with the needs of your students and constituents, the better you can cater your events to them. SSMU is huge. We have 25,000 students. I don't think it's the ideal situation of a person representing the event planning of all those to come up with these events. We have event coordinators and planners who are underground who work with students with a lot, and they're much more in tune with their needs. They're far more informed and far more capable of planning these events. And I want to use my position as VP Internal to make sure that I can provide them with the resources and leadership that they can to accomplish these goals. But this has to come from the issues from them. If there are students who want to see certain kind of events that don't have alcohol, that have different kinds of music, that have different kinds of events, we have a lot of ways for them to organize, to have their voices heard, and I want to strengthen those venues. I don't want it to become a top-down, leadership declaration. I want to make sure that we have the coordinators doing it to be able to speak for that.
Okay, so just to follow up, like you mentioned, delegation of event planning duties is a central part of your platform. So considering the other aspects of the VP internal portfolio, including the listserv, managing the publication staff, and chairing the student engagement committee are all relatively small parts of the portfolio that are not very time consuming, and events does form the bulk of the job. What other initiatives will you be taking on in all of your spare time from not planning events?
Right. Something I've, for example, been interested in, obviously taking up time, listserv takes a lot of time, things like that. No one reads it, but we're going to keep doing it, and I'm going to try, make it as engaging as I possibly can. One of the things I've discussed with some of the people in my campaign outside of that is, like a small example, would be I want to have something that recognizes the work that media publications on campus put in. Give me a second. I want to make sure, I want to have something, I guess, an Oscars, a Pulitzer, whatever, loosely defined version of that, where we can identify some of the, the best journalistic pieces that accomplished by things like McGill Daily, Tribune, and so forth, and have that recognized.
Okay, so the Vice President, pardon me, the VP Internal is responsible for communications and student engagement within the society and is the executive tasked with responding to criticism that the SSMU doesn't always represent the entirety of its membership. What new consultation methods would you implement to ensure that all SSMU members are represented in decision making?
This is definitely the question that's kind of brought up every single year, VP Internal. We also have these kind of broad rhetorical answers about how to address that. And the reason they're broad rhetorical is because no one really has a very good idea about how we can overcome these kind of shortcomings. Something that I've seen, and I fully haven't fleshed out, I'm going to be honest about that, but I was very impressed with the work that was put into the climate change motion. There was a lot of feedback from the example from the engineering faculty, and that kind of created a lot of dialogue, and there's a lot of progress being on that. What I'm thinking is the fact that the onus currently exists on faculties, on other external groups to contact SSMU. They don't do that. We have office hours that go unvisited for months at a time for some counselors and so forth, some representatives. I think I'll be very frank. I don't exactly have the perfect vision of how we're going to execute this, but I think there should be an onus on SSMU to reach out to the actual faculty associations. This can involve something like having an ambassador actually attend their meetings once in a while. Once a month for some capacity like that, to listen to the concerns that they're not raising themselves, but they have within their own internal organizations. If they're not speaking up, I'm not going to blame them for not doing so. I think the onus has to be shifted more towards SSMU to listen to their voice, drag it out of them.
Okay, so I guess more specifically, how would you respond in a scenario where campus was polarized about the appropriate response to an issue, but a decision had to be made?
That's awfully vague. We can't really have a specific answer of we're going to do this or that every time. Like, we can't say every time we're going to. I think something that has been done with SSMU is, again, this isn't a perfect depiction, but the onus is increasingly falling on we should play it safe and we should, inherently apologize and be more, accepting and compromissory. That's not necessarily a bad approach to take. We do have to make sure we're leaning on the side of taking care of people instead of offending them. But there has to be a line drawn. I think that it's really hard to answer your question without really knowing the nuances of the case.
Okay, so to move to publications, which is another major part of the VP internal portfolio, as you know, the Old McGill yearbook has been consistently running a deficit in recent years, and SMU is currently running a plebiscite question this referendum period to solicit student interest in a new structure for the yearbook, whereby students would pay into a small fee each semester and then receive a yearbook at no additional cost upon graduation. So assuming that this question does pass and SMU runs a yearbook fee next semester, what ideas do you have for the structure and design of the yearbook this year?
Well, this will have to be a lot more conversation with the publication team. They're the ones who know it best and so forth. I mean, we'd have to work out the accounting. A lot of that, I think, to my understanding, has been done. Last year's VP Internal, Daniel Heim, has done some work on this and so forth. So I want to pick up the track from there. I've never pretended to, and I don't pretend that this is going to be a situation of me coming up with great new ideas about how to fix the yearbook. Those ideas already exist. We have a framework of how to put this in place. What I'm arguing is that as VP Internal, I will promise to have this in motion during my term, have a referendum question passed, and put this, put the infrastructure in place. I'm not pretending. Again, people accuse me, you're not contributing anything new here. Well, no, this is not a new idea. Idea has existed for a while, but someone has to put it in place. And I think I've, at the very least, done a decent job with my campaign of raising awareness about the fact that there is a problem with the yearbook and that we are working to reforming it. The mechanisms that are obviously very complicated. I discuss it in some detail on my Facebook post, somewhat on Reddit. But this will be a group consultation that will be technical nitty-gritty questions, not about broad sweeping ideas.
Okay, so if the plebiscite question or the yearbook fee were to fail, would you attempt to salvage the yearbook through other methods, or what plans would you have for that potential outcome, or would you cancel the publication altogether?
Well, it's definitely a very difficult question. I frankly don't have an answer for you at the moment. I'm currently operating on the assumption that McGill students do want to have the yearbook. I think we're hoping that this referendum does pass. I don't think I haven't seen a single person advocating against it. In the strange event that it does, we will have to have a conversation about what kind of financial costs can we incur. If we do consistently incur them, is there places where we can make cuts without compromising the quality of the yearbook? Could advertising help? Things like that. But it will be a difficult question, and I just want to say I am willing to say no under certain circumstances, but that's a very difficult, but I don't want to.
Okay, so we've talked about some of the major responsibilities of the VP Internal. According to the Constitution, the responsibilities are faculty relations, communications, programming activities and events, and student engagement. Your platform primarily covers a number of areas traditionally outside the jurisdiction of the VP Internal. For example, electoral reform, which is typically done by the president, and defending student freedoms, an area traditionally done by the VP University Affairs. What do you understand to be the role of the VP Internal?
I think the VP Internal has a very heavy focus on before the school year starts. I think Frosh is by far the largest single, time-wise and in terms of visibility, responsibility for VP Internal. 4 floors as well is also a very large event. I think in a nutshell, it's, we can sum it down as event planning. A lot of those events have passed. We have Faculty Olympics coming up. We also have the grad ball, and so forth. Beyond that, I want to make sure we have the infrastructure in place for next year's events planners, next year's VP Internal, which I will not be, to make sure that they have a functional team. Obviously, have missing a VP Internal for the entire semester has caused some, disarray and confusion in the system. I at least want to try to bring it together so that the next person comes in, they have something tangible to work on. That means making sure the current teams like Spin and so forth are in place, that they're, being led well, that their leadership structure is in place, so we can pick that up next year, so the Frosh, isn't undermined by the absence of the past 4 months.
Okay, so SMU Council and the SMU executive team have begun a series of discussions about the restructuring of executive portfolios in order to be more sustainable and more efficient. How do you see the role of the VP Internal changing in the future?
So the discussion about having a 7th executive you're referring to primarily. This is something I've heard some input from you guys about the executives. I've also talked to a few of the counselors who are not as enthusiastic about the idea and so forth. So, we definitely don't necessarily at this point have a very clear vision of what the council and the executive necessarily want that to be. I think we need to discuss something I've envisioned, and this isn't necessarily something I'm going to stand on, but the fact that we can maybe shift more administrative duties that don't have as much political implications or leadership implications to specified individuals, emailing, schedule setting, and so forth and so forth. Again, these are kind of the nitty-gritty details of we're going to have to look at the portfolio in a long, process and pick out what is going to be assigned to who.
All right, thank you to the current SMU executives for asking those questions. We would now like to open the floor to 7 questions from the audience, including those from online, which we only have 1 right now. In a couple rules regarding these questions, please try to keep them short. Don't go on a long monologue. As well, keep it respectful and try to maintain a certain level of professionalism while here. If the stream of questions becomes in a manner that is personal and attack-like, Election SMU does have the authority to veto questions. As well, if certain questions seem to follow the same pattern, we'll ignore those as well. All right, so is there any questions from the audience? No, that's fine. Just shout.
One of the concerns that I have about the election, and I think this has been echoed largely on campus, is that there's been a certain culture around them that has been very harmful. It's been like a really high level of scrutiny for candidates that do run, and it's been a very toxic environment that has a negative impact on the mental health of people who run. I'm wondering if you see this as a concern, if this is affecting the accessibility of the positions and the potential equality of candidates that are running for the future position, and if so, do you feel like your plans for electoral reform will somehow address these issues?
Can I have about 2 minutes to answer that instead of 1? So 2 points. One, I'm glad, these are definitely concerns. Mental health can become a question here. I'm kind of concerned about the absence of these concerns last year when I was being attacked for my financial conditions, including my race, where I come from. A lot of questions were raised, and the people currently very upset about it now were awfully quiet back then. In fact, a lot of the people actually organizing the event were the ones leading the attacks. I find it incredibly hypocritical that they're now having the audacity to stand here and say, oh, it's getting too personal. We should not vote him down because I don't like how personal it is. You can hear my voice. I'm a bit upset about it. So no, I'm not, humoring that. The second point about slate campaigning, I think more relevant to the election, is that how it currently exists, because we're all running as individual candidates, a lot more attention is placed on the individual. How I can see slate campaigning, if we can do it well, if we have a team running of 3, 4, 5 people that has a common unified platform, therefore, more of the election we focus on the conversation, because it doesn't make as much sense to attack any individual because they're only a fraction of the team. This way, the platform, I'm hoping, could be bigger than the individual candidate supporting it. We can actually surpass, something that's if it's a minor, not at the presidency, smaller position. If we can focus on what they're proposing, it doesn't make sense to attack a single person because the other 4 people that are also supporting the platform. This might not work. I hope it does. I have faith that it can do, but it will require us to make sure that the slate campaigning is done properly.
Thank you. Any other questions? I heard you need the line.
It's better to talk. Okay, cool. Okay. Hi, Lexi. First of all, thank you for responding to the post on Facebook and for your discussions with all of us as a no group of students. Really appreciate it. So first of all, this is a question that I posted on your event page, and I just wanted to get some clarification on it. So you talked about the amazing accomplishments of McGill students in the fight against oppression, misogyny, racism, homophobia, and more, and added that we still have so much more to accomplish in reducing the barriers to accessibility and equity. I think this is a really valid concern, especially something about around inclusive event planning and making sure that everyone has access to all of the events under your portfolio. But we just want to make sure, what are some measures that you have in place to promote the equity and accessibility that you talk about, saying yourself that we have more to accomplish in it? We just want to get some more of those.
Absolutely. Sorry, I haven't been able to answer, obviously. There's a lot of questions on my page. I do apologize if I haven't been able to get to yours. I will try to. So, for example, we have, I think equity and accessibility is a very prominent concern in our council, SMU executives. If we look at, some of our exec, Emily's a very ardent fighter for a lot of people affected by climate change. We look at Chloe, she mentions accessibility pretty much every guest speaker that comes to council, she brings up how does this affect accessibility. Kareem had the word equity 34 times in his platform last year. These are very prominent concerns as to what we're dealing with. They're covered. Those bases are covered. If we look at any other system of government in the world, they do not have every individual fighting for every single aspect. I can comfortably say right now that I could give you an answer about we're going to make sure we listen to accessibility and equity and accountability. But the fact is, there's already a lot of strong representation for that. There's already a lot of good groups that look out for this. The Equity Commission exists entirely just for this very purpose and so forth. This is covered on a lot of different bases. We could have someone on council that has other priorities. We can have someone who's prioritizing is making sure that we're financially sustainable, that we can make sure that we have communications are working properly and so forth. I'm concerned about the administrative bureaucratic nitty-gritty about it. The fact that I'm not prioritizing my campaign and equity accessibility doesn't mean I don't care about it. It's because I don't think I'm the most qualified and informed and, whatever candidate to accomplish that. I think we have a great exec that's already worrying about that, and I'm going to let them handle it because they're going to do a better job than I will.
Thank you. We now would like to take a question from Twitter here. Someone asks, how do you draw the line of oppression versus freedom of speech that you mentioned in your platform?
Obviously a very complicated intellectual debate. We can you can read a few papers about this. I think trying to draw it out theoretically isn't something we're going to accomplish. I think I kind of like the statement about a judge in Tennessee who was asked, can you define pornography? And he said, no, but I know it when I see it. This isn't necessarily satisfactory, but the fact is that we're going to have cases that blur those lines. And I don't think I'm the one going to be deciding whether or not this is a freedom of speech issue or it's oppression. I don't want that position. I don't want to be leading an equity commission. I don't want to be the one speaking on behalf of the position. But when we're having a debate in council as to whether or not this position is or is not oppressive, whether or not this position is a violation of free speech, I want to be able to speak on behalf of those students who have a different understanding of where that line is drawn. I am not going to be deciding that this is not oppressive or this is a violation of free speech or so forth. There are many of us that will be doing so. It will be a discussion of nearly 24 people. I want to contribute a diversity of opinions as to where that line is drawn, and that's what I want to accomplish. I don't want to make that decision myself.
Thank you. Another question from the audience. We're going to go back there. Then we'll do you.
Thank you. Hi, Alexi. I think probably you and the members of the current executive at SSMU would probably all agree that you have a somewhat different political viewpoint, so members of the current executive. And it's sometimes very difficult when working in close quarters with people on contentious issues to get along and move things forward when there are those strong disagreements. So I'm wondering, if you're elected, how will you manage to work with people who you have really opposing views to make sure that SSMU moves forward collectively and accomplishes things?
Outstanding question. This is something I really wanted to get to on the Facebook page. What we see when we see SSMU is almost always some kind of vicious political battle of like weird ideas and like contrasting radical positions. 90% of what the exec does is the nitty-gritty administrative business of running an office. They're responsible for a lot of teams. They're responsible for HR. They're responsible for making sure accounts are in order, messages are sent, people are updated and informed. On those 90% of it, what we have to do, we agree. We can agree that we need to make sure that students can access something, or that people are informed of events happening in McGill, that more people are voting and so forth. That's not a political contentious issue. We can all agree that we need to be having electoral, the yearbook financially sustainable. I don't think the fact that I have a different idea of economic systems versus Kareem somehow will undermine our ability to fund that yearbook. We can agree that if we have more students paying for it and more students buying it, it'll be more sustainable. I guess one of the my defenses of the political radicalization is that the VP internal is not a very political position. The things I've discussed of like the electoral reform and so forth are not very political. And beyond that, I think I can personally state, and I won't speak for them, but I think we kind of surprisingly like each other on an acceptable level. Like there's not a lot of vitriol, in like much less than you'd expect at least. It really is kind of fine, but that's for them to really decide on their own too. Thank you.
Hi, Alexi. So as you said, the VP internal position is not the most political, so let's talk about events, because you don't talk about them much in your platform. Events are the biggest part of the internal portfolio and the biggest method of outreach we have with the student body. Although we keep saying Frosh and 4 floors are over, next semester holds major SSMU events which have not been addressed in your platform. I understand you wish to delegate more responsibilities to SPIN, yet as we can observe with what happened with 4 floors, not having a clear structure for SPIN or a clear chain of command can severely impact the event at hand and its participants. Exactly what type of leadership role would you take on SPIN, do you believe, to bring new ideas to the table? And out of the upcoming SSMU events for next semester, such as Week 101, Faculty Olympics, Red and White Week, and Grad Frosh, which ones have you attended in the past, and how would you want to improve these events?
I was about the 4 floors. To my understanding, someone should definitely clarify this more. To my understanding, part of the problem there was the decision was made from top down as to how the tickets were going to be sold. This was a decision made from the executive council. The fill-in, again, these were people who about tickets being sold and so forth. That was delegated down to the lower members of, that was to the committee. Because of the way tickets were sold differently, the event didn't go as well as planned. The people who organized these events that I've spoke to raised the criticism that they were aware that this would not work well. Selling tickets online was not going to work well. Members of the committee, agreed with that, and this decision was made top. I'm not speaking, as overly informed about this, but I don't think this was a decision of a lack of leadership. I think this was a decision of made leadership that ultimately, didn't succeed. There are, of course, many situations where we can have a great leader moving in, and we're going to do this and this and this. And I've done, if I had done about all these events in the past and led them, it has as much experience as you have, then yes, I would be more comfortable saying I have all these visions for these events. But I haven't, and I'm comfortable saying that. But the event planners and coordinators have been a participant in these events. I want to listen to their ideas and see what they're saying. I'm not pretending to have a perfect vision of what faculty in the school look like, but people have participated in it, people have coordinated it, and I think they can probably figure out more or less what that's going to look like, and I want to make sure I can support them and give them the resources so they can do the best job. I hope that's okay.
Thank you. Any other questions?
As VP Internal, you would chair the Student Engagement Committee. Can you elaborate on the purpose and mandate of the Student Engagement Committee and what your plans would be?
No, I don't. I can't really elaborate upon it. It's meant to engage students in the activities of SMU, I guess. I mean, yeah, I've not been involved with events. That's something I've been honest about. I'm trying to defend myself by arguing that I'm hoping to empower students who have been more engaged with those. I'm not even independently of this event, I'm very consciously and openly supportive of delegationing powers, decentralizing decision-making processes. I think we have a lot of centralized authority inside of SMU. I think we're making a lot of top-down decisions that, despite the conversation of, oh, let's get feedback and let's listen to what the people on the ground are doing, we're not. There's, if you look at the other, one of the other platforms in this election was having the SMU, VP Internal possibly, shutting down the McGill once, McGill twice chant and criticizing the fact that, Frosh coordinators weren't necessarily the walking in line with the the new attitudes of SMU and the culture of Frosh and so forth. I don't think SMU should be deciding the culture of Frosh. I don't think that the executive should be leading like these are now our new values, fulfill them. I think the Frosh coordinators are the ones who create Frosh. I think they're the ones who make the values that will be made students will be experiencing during Frosh, and we shouldn't tell them what those values are.
Thank you. We have another question online. You propose to defend student freedoms, in particular student freedom of speech. How do you propose to protect students from hate speech and other forms of expression that are dangerous to students' mental and physical health? As reference, Yale and Dartmouth are currently struggling with racism due to protection by free speech.
I think that the current debate, at least on the pages, has this kind of dichotomy of we can either push for free speech or we can either push for protection of equity, and I don't think that's right at all. I think if we can have a strong, a firm line of this is not, oppression, that this is legitimate criticism, we take it a lot more seriously when there's actual hate speech happening. When we start labeling everything hate speech and the line becomes very loose and the slippery slope we start falling down it, no one takes these accusations seriously. We treat it as a joke, we treat it as oversensitive. If we can draw a firm line and show that we can commit to that line, if we can show that, okay, we will protect your freedom of speech when it's generally freedom of speech, but we will chastise you or denounce you when it is a violation of people's equity and safe space, then that will be taken more legitimately. I think that my contribution by bringing this in will add more legitimacy, because if we look at some things that happened in the past, when we have things like Farningate and we have things like blurred lines, people don't take that seriously because we have this very loose definition of offensiveness. If we continue with this trajectory, then actual events in the future that are clear and cut examples of oppression will not be taken as seriously by the student body, and I want to make sure that doesn't happen.
Thank you. So that actually expires the 7 questions that we had planned for. However, it has been agreed upon by 4 that we are willing to take a couple more. Is there one more question from the audience?
Hey, so recently there was a Facebook event page made that was the Vote No. And it was meant as a discussion forum to be able to have people voice their opinions on whether, it was from the side of people who did not necessarily agree, and we wanted people to be able to see why and talk about it. You ran a campaign talking about letting people have more of a voice in SMU, having stronger communication, but as soon as a campaign, or not a campaign, an event comes up where people can talk about these sorts of things, you write a large blurb about why it's not all right. Why people who are expressing those opinions are attacking. Can you explain why?
Yeah, I'm not advocating them to shut down the page. I'm not saying we should ban them from speaking. I'm presenting an intelligent response to what their criticisms are and defending myself. I think we need to be doing more of that. The choice isn't to ban something or not criticize it. The choice should be, let me present a number of arguments, which I hope, you guys agreed were intelligent and thought out, and I think I did so as respectfully as I could. I think, people are agreeing with that overall, and I rebuttaling to their claims. I mean, I think I'm doing the exact opposite. I'm not suppressing them from speaking. In fact, if I wanted to, I wouldn't have posted on their event page. I could have posted on mine and ignored theirs. I'm responding to their concerns. I'm treating them seriously. I'm disagreeing with their positions. I'm disagreeing. I don't agree with what their envision of how they can improve SMU. I don't think having a VP internal position stay vacant for another semester is going to help SMU. I think I can reasonably disagree with that without suppressing them.
We'll ask one follow-up. No, you can't say no statement.
No statement.
Okay.
I promise. Yeah. You said that you're not oppressing our group, which in letting us speak, but you claim that we are oppressing your followers. You brought up the fact that by posting these sorts of things, I think you said 49% or 48% of the people that voted for you, their voices were not being heard and were being actively oppressed. How are you saying that you're not doing the same to us by saying that it's not all right for us to post?
I never said it's not all right to post. I've never once said, take this page down, you're offending me or oppressing me. I said that
You said we're oppressing the voters who voted
yes,
for you.
by saying that students should choose to have no position, have the vacancy continue, to have the workload that the execs are currently trying to delegate and don't have a solution for right now, the fact that there's a vacant GM position, there's a vacant daycare position, the fact that SMU's going through a difficult time, and your solution is to think that instead of having someone with somewhat different views come into council, that we should just have no one come into council. I mean, is that genuine? Do you genuinely believe that SMU will be better off from me coming in? I mean, we can disagree whether or not I have the right values for SMU. I think we can agree that given how much time I spend doing all this stuff, I kind of care a little bit. Do you really think I'm going in there to destroy something like that I put countless hours in, or are we better off having that position vacant? Thank you.
Is there any more questions from the audience who haven't asked before? All right, thank you. We'll move. Yeah? Alexi said you're good?
Yeah, come on. Cool. Okay.
This will be the last question.
Thanks for taking my second question. So in the first question that I asked you, you said that you might not have been the right person to talk about equity, and there were other people on SMU exec, all the execs that you pointed out, who have experience with equity and how they can do that work for you in that field. But you just mentioned at the same time that you have this hard stance about the Farnan Gate incident, about freedom of speech, and that it sounds like there's a conflict right now between giving that responsibility of equity and making sure that equitable event planning, keeping all of our students' interests in mind, from minority groups.
I can answer that. So, for example, we have a situation right now with the WUSC, the fiasco happening like that. We had the University Affairs VP handle that, which is in her portfolio. I mean, that is something that she was responsible for. There was an equity commission that was involved in this decision-making process again. I will not be interfering with their institutionally, enshrined ability to handle these situations. I disagree with how it was handled. I think it could have been handled differently, but I'm not interfering with that, and I'm not, saying they're wrong. What I'll be saying is that in a council debate, in an executive debate, where we're discussing these issues, like when we were discussing whether or not to issue the apology 2 years ago, I will have a voice that will represent a different set of views. I've been to council on October 15th where they were debating whether or not to have nonviolent activism supporting that as part of the manifesto. The overwhelming majority of the council said, no, we don't like the word nonviolent. We don't want to support nonviolent activism because, of a myriad of reasons. I think the majority of McGill, I don't think 47.5, I think the last majority of McGill is not down for violent activism. I think they would support the argument that we should have nonviolent activism. Those students' voices are not being heard very vocally. There are members of council that represent those, but they're a minority, and I want to increase that contribution. That's where I think I'm drawing a line between contributing to free speech versus, delegating equity responsibilities.
Thank you. All right, that will end the audience questions. We'd now like to move into closing statements. You have a minute and a half for your closing statement.
Thank you. What I want to reassure to the people concerned about my possible election, I will be here for 4 months. I'm hoping to contribute meaningful, tangible things to the school that I've spent a lot of time at and I really, really like. I think I have enough ability and support of students' body to make a tangible contribution. I will not destroy the things you've created. I will not destroy safe space and equity and accessibility. I have nothing. I don't want to do that. We can have a system of government that represents other views. And the reason I'm doing this, people ask me, like, Alex, you're getting all this flack and you're getting people harassing you and you're clearly, you can do other stuff with your time. Why are you doing this? The reason I'm doing this is because I want to show that we can have a moderate candidate with center-right views come to council, accomplish good things that everyone can agree on, and show that we can do so in the future. I will only be here for 4 months if I'm successful. But there will be many, many years of students who are here now, students that aren't here at McGill yet, who I want to make sure that they have the same representation that I'm hoping to offer. I want to empower young students right now who might not have the same views that you have, or Kareem or anyone else, so they can be empowered to come to council. Because I don't think they're very comfortable doing so right now. They've seen the resistance happening on the page you've set up, and they're afraid of that having the same treatment if they run for council. If I can set a precedent of I can do this and not destroy everything you love, maybe you'll trust us a little bit more. Maybe you'll trust that our positions are genuine and that there's room for both of those positions in council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That ends the VP internal by-election debate for 2015. I would like to thank everybody who came out this evening. Voting is now open on simplyvoting.com. Be sure to cast your ballot. Thank you.